We are extremely delighted to have this piece as one of the centerpieces of our new Europe 1600 to 1815 galleries, because it's such a spectacular ensemble. It really gives you an idea of Baroque garden sculpture, and it's, I think, now the largest original piece of Meissen sculpture that exists anywhere. It is a wonderful piece to have on display here. The Meissen Fountain was originally acquired by the museum in 1870, and at that time it was described as much shattered. So when we first tried to sort of put it together, we sort of immediately saw that we had lots of pieces, but there were also quite a few pieces that we probably didn't have. A lot of these pieces had been in store since 1870. Many of the pieces that we had were just damaged, they were broken in bits, sometimes there were little bits missing. So we restored many pieces that were damaged, but of course there were other bits that were completely missing, and for those we had to go the way of reproducing the parts. We did a lot of research into the background of the fountain, and where it first led us was to a garden in Dresden, just outside of the center, and that was actually the summer palace of Count Heinrich von Brühl, mainly a big garden and a tiny little palace to it. But at the end of the garden he had this huge sculptural fountain created. We also started to do research in the archives in Dresden and at the factory in Meissen, and there we actually read in the earliest reports that von Brühl himself asked Meissen to make a smaller version of his garden sculpture in porcelain. We had a real breakthrough at that first visit to Dresden when we discovered that they had actually a 19th century copy of this fountain. So we worked together with the people there, and we were allowed to take scans of all the pieces that we were missing here, and so we could use those to start reproduce the pieces. We decided we wanted to make the replacement parts for this fountain in porcelain, but the main problem with working with porcelain is that it shrinks quite a bit. So whatever you make as a model has to be a lot bigger than what you end up with. So then we ended up with all these enlarged models, and then we had to translate them into real physical models. And there were two techniques that we used for that. For the fine detail in the two water wheels, for instance, we used 3D printing techniques, which gives a very fine resolution, but it's very, very expensive, the material that you actually use. So for all the bigger rock work and wall work, we used a computer-steered routing machine. We went to Stoke-on-Trent and we worked with a small workshop that specializes in making plaster molds for the ceramic industry, and we had them make plaster multi-part molds for each of the parts. Those were taken to London again, and then at the RCA and used the traditional techniques of pressing slabs of clay into those molds and fitting them together to make the porcelain parts. The detail that some of the figures have is absolutely amazing. You can actually see the water staining on some parts. A fountain like that would run with rose water, which was scented, of course, with rose petals and gave a wonderful smell as well as a sound and a visual feast. The composition of this is a sort of chariot, a shell chariot with Neptune and his bride on top, and it's drawn by those two seahorses towards us. So it's actually quite a dramatic Baroque scene. The whole process, starting for the first time seeing all the broken bits in store and having the idea of doing something with it, to doing all the research and then finally seeing everything come together, was actually quite emotional. It was wonderful because for the first time you could really appreciate the composition of the piece together.